I'm Tim Bradner. Welcome to Capital News, and welcome today to Bryan Butcher, the CEO and Executive Director of Alaska Housing Finance Corporation. Bryan, thanks for joining us.
Absolutely, Tim. Thanks for inviting me on.
Bryan, Alaska Housing has been around for a long time and has a long history. Maybe you could just tell us just a quick review of what the corporation does. It does a lot of things, everything relating to housing, and a little bit of its history.
Sure. Yeah, we were started in 1971 under Governor Egan. He signed our creation into law, and it was as a result of federal law had been passed that allowed states to have special programs, tax-exempt bonds we could sell for first-time home buyers. And so this would allow a lower interest rate for the state's first-time home buyers. So we were created. Since then, we have been a special program for veterans loans as well. We're only 5 states that can sell tax-exempt debt to allow us to get lower interest rates for veterans. And so a lot of what we do are mortgages in the state, primarily rural, first-time home buyer, veterans. That tends to be kind of our niche. We also run all the public housing in the state. In 1993, the old ASHA, the Alaska State Housing Authority, which ran all the public housing for HUD, was combined with AHFC. And so now we have 16 different communities. We have public housing units. We have 1,600 units we run, and we've got between 5,000 and 6,000 apartment vouchers. This is an entirely federally funded program that we run for HUD, for the federal government. And then we also do a number of other things. We're in charge of energy efficiency, the energy code for the state. We're the homeless agency for the state. And so we have a number of homeless programs that run through it too. But we really do a lot of things here, which makes it fun to work here. Very
interesting. And boy, it kind of takes your breath away. Bryan, am I correct that the merger of the Alaska State Housing Authority and Alaska Housing Finance was kind of unique because it was one of the few times where a housing operation agency was combined with a financing entity? Is that the case? Do I remember that correctly?
Yeah, that's very true. In fact, there's only 2 states that even run all of their public housing. There's 3,000 tiny public housing agencies all over the country. And so not only do we do that, which is really unique, but we're combined with the housing finance side of things, which is also unique and really adds a lot because we're able to use the funds we make on the housing finance side to help with the upkeep of the apartments and things that HUD really doesn't provide enough dollars for. And so there's really a good synergy between the two.
Yeah. Bryan, just speaking of finances, what was the original state capitalization of Alaska Housing? And you've paid a lot more than that in dividends back to the state since then.
Yeah, initially we had a couple as the oil money started to flow. In the 70s, we got about $1 million of capitalization in our early years. We've been paying a dividend back to the state. We pay 75% of our net income every year, and we've now paid about $2.1 billion back, and we're continuing to pay it. In this current fiscal year, $43 million was the dividend that we paid.
And as I remember, that's about the same every year, 50 million to 43 in the 40 million range is the dividend paid every year.
Yeah, it's gone up and down a little bit depending on what happens. The pandemic has slowed business a little bit. The post 08-09 Great Recession also had impacts. So it does bounce around a little bit, but it's usually a pretty substantial number.
Bryan, does just my own memory is that there was a period when Alaska Housing Finance was really important to Alaska's housing market. The savings and loan associations had collapsed around the country, and Alaska urgently needed a source of long-term money for home building, and Alaska Housing was able to step into the breach, as I recall.
Yeah, I mean, that was the late 80s when the price of oil really plummeted and the state went into a deep recession, and we saw a really large mass migration out of the state. There were tens of thousands of foreclosures, and Alaska Housing was able to be here to take them into the portfolio and not just be able to manage them, but also be able to eventually sell them off, but not do it in mass, which would have exacerbated a housing market that was in free fall. And Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, who are our competitors for mortgages, we work with the banks and credit unions and mortgage companies. We're not their competition, but we are with DC. They redlined the state and they said, with the economy, we're not going to be buying any mortgages. And had it not been for Alaska Housing, the entire real estate and mortgage market in the late 80s would have just frozen up and really been unable to continue.
Yeah, I recall that was very dramatic period during the state's history. So there was a periods when Alaska Housing has been able to really step into the breach. Of course, now you have competitors, and you're what percentage of the home mortgage market does Alaska Housing Finance have now, and what was it at one time?
Yeah, it goes up and down. Right now, it's about 20%, and it really depends on the interest rates, the programs we're able to provide. Back in the late 80s, it was approaching 90%. Virtually every mortgage loan in this state was an Alaska Housing loan because everybody else vacated. And, Tim, you remember banks were going under, savings and loans were going under. It was really a precarious time to be living in Alaska. And because we'd never had a bubble burst post-oil like we had, nobody really knew how Alaska was going to recover. And fortunately, we've recovered in a really strong way, but those are really uncertain times.
And fortunately, you guys were there at the time to help shore up the market. Bryan, since then, the mission has changed a bit, and I know just recently, in the past couple of years, you folks have handled a lot of the mortgage release, pandemic relief, housing money, and really one of the best performing programs in the country, as I recall. And I know you have partners in this, but maybe you could just tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, we were the first state with a huge number of federal dollars that came in for pandemic relief. We were one of the first states to get the rent relief program out there that would allow renters that had lost their jobs or been detrimentally impacted by the pandemic. We were able to use the federal funds to pay their rent. And to date, we've paid over $250 million out. We continue to pay it out. We're beginning a mortgage relief program for homeowners that are dealing with difficulties because of the pandemic, and that's just going now. It's just been approved. And so, yep, it's been a real challenge, but we know it's helping get the economy back up on its feet, and we're really happy to do everything we can.
And the mortgage relief also helps stem any homelessness if people are foreclosed on and evicted.
Yeah, and the best way to help the homelessness issue in Alaska is to stop people from becoming homeless in the first place. That's much cheaper to do. That being said, we work on both sides of it, however we can help.
Great. Well, Bryan, thanks for joining us today. It's been very interesting. And Alaska Housing has a long history, and it'll surely be around for many years to come.
I appreciate the opportunity.